Welcome back to another video brought to you by yours truly. Drop a bomb for that. We got crazy conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. I ain't gonna lie, I've been watching a lot of videos like similar to this recently. They got me hooked. I'm not gonna hold you. I've been on YouTube. Y'all seen the last couple videos I reacted to. But you feel me? Let's get into it. Okay,
Fruit Machine. The Fruit Machine is an ambiguous name, but if you have a keen mind, you might have had a few assumptions on what it could have been about. But if you're still in the dark, let me give you its other name.
Let me fix this. There we go.
Canada's gaydar, or gay detection machine. That should paint a bit of a clearer picture. If I told you that the Canadian government in the 1960s came up with a strange device and a series of tests specifically made to identify gay men so that they could discriminate against them, you would call me crazy, right? Well, you're not alone.
Crazy.
But unfortunately, you are wrong. And the Canadian government...
That is wild.
Let me explain. The whole point of this Fruit Machine was essentially to identify and remove homosexual men working in government roles, specifically in the military and law enforcement. During the 1960s,
damn, gay people couldn't even get a government job. They just regular people. They're just regular people. Why can't they work? Niggas can't even work. That's not crazy.
Dr. Frank Robert Wake developed a rather strange series of psychological tests with the purpose of, obviously, identifying gay men. How this machine actually worked was kind of hilarious and extremely rudimentary. Basically, all it would do is it would show you erotic images and say, essentially, gay buzzwords to see if your body had any sort of positive reaction to this stimuli. One of the markers they were looking for was a dilation of the subject's pupils, among other things. This was essentially the equivalent of a lie detector, but instead of detecting lies, it was detecting the big gay. Regardless of its ineffectiveness and rather strange methods, the results were taken seriously and led to the firing and discrimination of thousands of people, which unfortunately led to a huge rise in suicides, which is just heartbreaking.
Nah, yo, imagine just for being a little yay, you feel me? You lose out on bread. That's next level hating. That is literally next level hating. I'm not even gonna lie.
This entire project was discontinued in the late 1960s, making this entire Fruit Machine fiasco very short-lived, at least relatively, but the impact was still long-lasting. On top of the jobs and lives lost, the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, still continued to collect files on suspected gay people for years after this project was concluded. So if you're ever with a friend and they say, that guy's gay, I can tell because I have gaydar. Tell them, you don't have gaydar. The Canadian government had gaydar, and they used it to discriminate, whether they were gay or not. As any little twinkle.
I'm not even gonna lie, they mouths is mad pause. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Mad pause.
Of evidence was good enough for them, and this had huge impacts. Then just sit there and awkwardly look at each other for a few minutes, and if they ask you how you knew this, you know what to tell them. Trust me, bro. The gay bomb. While we're on the topic of the big gay, I have one more for you. That being the gay bomb, which was a non-lethal chemical weapon theorized by, surprise, surprise, the United States military, specifically the Air Force. This bomb's purpose was simple yet strange. It was meant to be dropped over enemy territories, spreading a chemical mixture in the form of gas that would turn enemy troops essentially homosexual. This hypothetical weapon was confirmed in a 1994 Department of Defense document.
Did it actually work?
A hypothetical weapon designed to dispense sexual pheromones among enemy forces to generate mutual attraction. Now, initially, I thought the military application would be that the soldiers would just be too busy loving on each other to get any fighting done, but that wasn't the case. It's actually a lot less interesting. Supposedly, the entire point was to cause confusion and panic amongst these troops, reducing their effectiveness in battle. Picture this. The year is 1993. You and your friend are sitting on the couch watching the movie Sniper, which just came out. When all of a sudden, you say to your friend jokingly, I bet the US government's probably thought about making bombs that would turn the enemies gay. You and your friend have a chuckle and continue the movie. However, the following year, you are hanging out with the same friend again, and instead of watching a movie, you are doing something that every teenager does, reading a Department of Defense release, when all of a sudden you see actual confirmation that the US Air Force was contemplating a gay bomb. After reading this, you're shocked, and you look your homie in the eyes and can't believe that your silly little joke was true. And in that moment, you and your friend start making out because you guys were gay. Alright, seriously.
What? What are we doing here? What are we doing here?
First two are a bit silly, but these get a lot more serious. Project MK Naomi. As I said, Project MK, I'm sure the word Ultra was the first thing that popped into your head. And that's because most people know about that crazy true conspiracy theory. And for that reason, I wanted to add something a bit different. Project MK Naomi was actually the successor of MK Ultra, and was a collaboration between the CIA and the US Department of Defense. And it went on for almost 2 decades. From the 1950s to the 1970s. The entire goal of Project MK Naomi was to gain a deeper knowledge on chemical and biological warfare weapons, specifically to determine what substances would kill people and what chemicals would do what to people. Once the CIA and Department of Defense had a list of chemicals and a list of reactions ranging from irritation all the way to death, they then started focusing on unique delivery systems for these chemicals. Most notable of which being dart guns, specifically dart guns either filled or having their tip coated with these specific chemicals, with one of the most famous examples being the heart attack gun, which was, like you may have guessed, a gun that shot a dart at a target that would, shortly after injection, cause a heart attack in the victim, making a very intentional death seem accidental. And it's no doubt that these weapons would have been very useful for spies, especially during the Cold War, when tensions and the need for a good spy was at an all-time high. And if you're for some reason unfamiliar with Project MK Ultra, it's basically the government using LSD on non-consenting individuals to try to test mind control as a very basic.
What? What am I hearing? What in the unethical BS am I literally watching right now? They really did that?
Elevator pitch. But I'm assuming most of you are aware of that one. USA's
I wasn't aware of that.
Attack. This video is quickly taking a very dark turn, but that's kind of how these lists go. In 1962, during the Cold War, the US wasn't just tense with Russia, it also had growing tensions with its southern neighbor, Cuba. Specifically because Fidel Castro had risen to power in Cuba, and was a rather large proponent of communism, or at least kept a very good relationship with Russia. During this time, the US experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis, which simply put was Russia putting their nukes in Cuba because the US had put their nukes in Turkey and Italy. This situation was scary, but it was resolved safely. However, the US did not forget, hence them coming up with Operation Northwoods. The plan suggested that the government would carry out a series of fake terrorist attacks on the American military and civilians, to then blame Cuba for these attacks and then justify going to war. Some of these crazy actions that they planned on doing to their own people was hijacking planes, sinking boats, and even bombing US cities, all done intentionally to point the blame at Cuba. But this wasn't just a get back for the Cuban Missile Crisis. This plan was part of a larger effort to oppose Fidel Castro's communist government, which was aligned directly with the Soviet Union, the USA's enemy at the time. And with the Soviet Union having an ally so close to US soil, the US was feeling the heat. Although, would that have justified any of these actions? I don't believe so. That being said, fortunately, none of the—
So you're gonna risk the lives of millions of people just because you got beef with another country? We ain't had nothing to do with that, but my boss, like, what is going on here?
Actually happened,
had
although it's
nothing to
not
do
because
with
the
that.
government had a change of heart and realized this was awful. President John F. Kennedy simply rejected the plan because he thought that this would cause a large-scale war against Russia, which he deemed to be too risky. Regardless though, none of these horrible attacks injured any innocent people, which is great. And nobody even knew about it until 1997, when the documents were declassified and made public. So yeah, although the government didn't sacrifice its own people in the name of war, they definitely heavily considered it, which is definitely concerning. North Korea abducting Japanese citizens. During the late 1970s to early 1980s, there were rumors spreading around coastal Japan that North Korean agents were abducting innocent Japanese citizens and taking them back to North Korea for a plethora of reasons. This rumor even gained government attention and was simply brushed off as a conspiracy theory that had absolutely no merit. That was until it was proven to be right. Between 1977 and 1983, North Korean agents were doing exactly what I described, abducting Japanese citizens from coastal cities of Japan and taking them back to North Korea for a multitude of reasons. And these people weren't your typical abduction victim. They weren't prostitutes or homeless or anybody who seemed potentially vulnerable. They were seemingly chosen at random, making this even more scary and bizarre. The Japanese government officially recognizes over 17 victims of North Korea's abduction, although North Korea only claims they abducted 13, which to me is even crazy that they admitted to anything. But some people suggest that over hundreds of people were taken. These victims were ranging anywhere from teenagers to adults, and were kidnapped for, like I mentioned, various reasons, but were most commonly used to teach Japanese or Japanese culture to North Korean spies, so that these North Korean spies could acclimate to the culture and essentially blend right in. Besides teaching at these schools, they would also provide fake IDs for covert operations, as these people weren't going to be in Japan, so spies could take their identity and use them. The only reason that North Korea ever even admitted to any of the abductions was because after investigations by the Japanese authorities, there was simply no doubt at all that these abductions were happening and that these people were in North Korea. It was only until there was absolutely no one else to blame and nowhere else to go for North Korea that they finally admitted. Unfortunately, there really is no happy ending to this story, and the chances are that these abductions have gone on much longer and there has been many more victims than we could have ever imagined in this situation. And with the way that things are currently with North Korea, it's very likely that they will never be held accountable for literally abducting, torturing, and killing innocent Japanese citizens. The US government poisoning alcohol. It's no conspiracy theory that from 1920 to 1933, the US government banned alcohol, hence this time being known as the Prohibition era, as alcohol was literally prohibited. But besides passing laws and regulations to ensure that no alcohol was being produced or distributed, the US government also took a few additional steps to really deter people from consuming alcohol. What the government chose to do was add methyl alcohol into industrial grade alcohols to deter human consumption. It's theorized that the government assumed that having these deadly poisons in this alcohol would cause some of these illegal consumers of alcohol to pass away, deterring these bootleggers to sell their product as it was killing their customers. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and the bootleggers continued to sell, and alcoholics continued to drink. And unsurprisingly, as a result of this, many people were poisoned and died. And in 1927, in New York alone, there was over 41 deaths confirmed to have come from alcohol poisoning from tainted alcohol, specifically the methyl alcohol. The government used this strategy up until 1933 when the prohibition ended, and it was at that point confirmed that the US government was literally poisoning alcohol, as it was recorded as a strategy to curb alcohol consumption. So yeah, the US was intentionally putting deadly chemicals into products that they knew that people were consuming. I find this one a bit interesting because although people weren't supposed to be consuming this, the US government knew that people were going to consume this. So the fact that they intentionally put deadly chemicals into it, to me, is a bit concerning. This might just be an optimistic thought, but I would like to believe that there's a way where you can deter people from drinking illegal industrial grade alcohol without putting literal poison in it that's going to undoubtedly cause death. Like potentially adding an agent that is extremely sour or potentially even extremely spicy, making the alcohol essentially unconsumable as it's so uncomfortable to drink, but still rendering it non-lethal. As great as this sounds, this might have not been an option, as those sorts of additives may have rendered the actual industrial grade alcohol less effective, which wouldn't have worked because this alcohol needed to serve its primary purpose, as it wasn't meant to be consumed. It was literally industrial grade. But yeah, anyway, from 1920 to 1933, the US government decided that the best way to deter people from drinking alcohol was by killing them, or at least slowly poisoning them, which I wouldn't say is much better. The USA's fake Vietnam attack. And we're already back. Does this story sound at all familiar? But seriously though, I could make an entire separate video focusing solely on extremely deplorable things that the US government has done. But I do value living, so if you really want that video, let me know in the comments, but if not, I probably won't make it. That being said, let's get into the fake Vietnam attack. In 1964, USA was of course beefing, this time with Northern Vietnam. This entire situation is known as the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and it marked a pivotal moment in the
Why can't we ever just chill? Like, why do we always gotta be beefing with somebody? Why?
Of the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. The situation happened in early August of 1964 and involved U.S. naval vessels conducting operations off the coast of North Vietnam. On August 2nd, the U.S. destroyer, the USS Maddox, was conducting intelligence patrols. And on this patrol, it encountered 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats. There was a small conflict which led the Maddox to fire warning shots at the torpedo boats and the torpedo boats to respond with an unsuccessful attack. The Maddox suffered minor damage, literally only took a single bullet hole, but the North Vietnamese torpedo boats were significantly damaged, with crew either dead or severely injured. This entire encounter happened because the North Vietnamese were pretty sussed out about covert US-backed operations happening on their coast. Regardless, this incident was relatively minor in regards to the Vietnam War as a whole. But what isn't is the alleged second attack that happened 2 days later on August 4th, 1964. It was claimed that on this day, another attack on the USS Maddox and the USS Turner Joy had taken place. The ships were claimed to have been targeted based on radar signals and intercepted communications between the North Vietnamese. However, with these claims seeming very plausible, there was little to no evidence and were later debunked. The captain of the USS Maddox, John Herrick, was almost instantly questioning the validity of these claims, as He was the captain and heard no such thing of this second attack. And shortly after, the entire attack was debunked and proven to be nothing more than manipulation. Investigations even confirmed that there was no North Vietnamese forces present anywhere near either of these ships that night. And the intelligence that they had misinterpreted was simply manipulated to spin the story of a potential second attack. The reason why I'm talking about this fake attack is because it was used as justification to amplify the war. Congress even passed the Gulf of Tonkin Revolution, which allowed the US's involvement in Vietnam to escalate heavily, leading to significant troop deployments and a major intensification of the war. It wasn't until years later, after the war had ended, that the US Department of Defense admitted that the second attack never happened. And even later on, declassified documents confirmed that there was a strategic plan to use this fake second attack as a pretext to escalate the war, which ended up becoming one of the most controversial wars in US history. There's no doubt that the Vietnam War was controversial, and this is only a tiny glimpse of some of the stuff that was going on. At least
so the war happened because of a bullshit ass lie that the US made.
Got him. We fucking got him.
on the US side of
Shit is
things.
so dumb.
Project Sunshine. Fair warning, there is a reason why this entry is at the end of the list, and that's because it is by far the most morbid subject in this entire video. Project Sunshine is also known as the Dead Baby Project, and that alone should give you a small glimpse into the insanity of this conspiracy theory proven true. Project Sunshine was a secret research project that was launched in 1953 to study the effects of radioactive fallout on human health and the environment. Already off to a bad start. The focus of this radioactive testing was specifically on strontium-90, which is regarded as the deadliest byproduct of nuclear detonation. The United States Atomic Energy Commission aimed to measure the amount of strontium-90 in human tissue, as it was typical for it to accumulate in human bones, specifically in children's bones whose skeletal systems were still developing and most vulnerable. Now here's the thing, as much as they potentially would have wanted to subject real children to strontium-90 to study the side effects, they were not able to do so, as it would be a huge moral dilemma, and definitely wouldn't fly well with the general public. So what they did do was gather over 1,500 human samples, primarily consisting of babies and young children, without the consent or knowledge of the families that they were taken from. These 1,500 adolescent cadavers were not originally from the...
What the fuck do you mean they stole kids without the family's consent? I say again, what the fuck do you mean you stole babies and children without their family's consent? This country is sick.
The United States, and were actually from countries like Australia and the UK, and were acquired by some pretty disgusting means, specifically preventing parents from examining their deceased child before they were sent away for nuclear testing. Typically, these deceased children were sent in parts to not raise suspicion, as parents may notice their entire child missing, but they may not notice their child missing a leg if they are not able to view the child's body in its entirety. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is extremely dark and honestly disgusting. The initial studies on strontium-90 only analyzed the effects on the human remains. However, shortly after, it expanded to studying its effects on natural environments, such as soil, grass, and grazing animals, where they were seeing what the effect of this strontium-90 would be as it ascended up the food chain. I don't think it'll serve as much as a surprise that once the practices of Project Sunshine were exposed, they were met with widespread outrage and even resulted in a stricter ethical standard when it came to scientific research, specifically those involving human subjects, dead or alive. It literally sounds like something your crazy uncle would say at Thanksgiving dinner. Hey, can you pass the potatoes? Yeah, here you go. Oh, did you know that in the 50s, the US government was actually essentially stealing dead children from overseas and using them to test the dangerous byproducts of nuclear fallout? Oh, crazy. Honestly though, it sounds too crazy to be true, but one thing I've learned from researching for this video...
Nah, this was a W vid. I'm not even gonna lie to you, man. Shouts out to... Trust me, bro. I ain't gonna lie, I might have to look into this dude's videos. I like the whole animation style videos that are very informative. I ain't gonna hold you. But... with that being said, this is the end of the video. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next video, man. Y'all say what's up to Coco. Yeah, I see Coco over there. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next video, man. Comment, feature, react down below. Hit that sub button. You feel me? We at 5,360. We trying to get to 6K by the end of the month. I'm gonna need a video to blow up or something, man. Share my shit. I don't know, but y'all see the socials up there too. Catch y'all on the next one. It's your boy Shay. We out of here.
Let that shit ride, 88.
It's that trench music. Can't feel my pain unless you been through it. They be rapping about shit that I've been doing. Rest in peace to my brothers I've been losing. Trying to find a cup, but I'm still using.